Hello, everybody. We are live once again. Today is Thursday, February 15th, 2024. My name is Alexis Brignoni, aka Briggs, and I'm accompanied by my co-host, the one that wakes up the roosters in the morning, the hardest working woman in the digital forensics field, the one that will stop learning only and only when she's dead, the one and only Heather Charpentier. The music is Higher Up by Shane Ivers and can be found at silvermansound.com. Hello, Heather. Oh.
Hello.
A bit of an abrupt ending to the music. Sorry about that.
Thank you for the great introduction again. You're crazy.
Yeah. And I mean, I'm just stating facts here.
Well, thank you. Thank you.
They are unrebutted. So.
Oh my gosh.
Well, another week has passed, and as everybody knows, some people might have Valentine hangovers. I guess they were Valentining too hard. Ronan is here saying hi, and that's why the chat is getting populated little by little. Johan is also around. Yeah, people are rolling in from all the Valentining they did yesterday.
Well, I'm glad everybody could make it after their big day.
Yeah, no, we got folks even from all the way from Melbourne in Australia joining us in the chat. So good to see you again, my friend. So what's happening? What happened since in your happenings since last time we were here, Heather? What's going on?
I mean, not a ton of happenings except for my lovely co-host helping me work on my very first artifact for LEAPP.
Wait, yes. that definitely requires what's it called? A few fireworks here. So what you want fireworks? I'll give you fireworks.
What you have to do.
No, that's laser lights. Let me give you fireworks. There we go. Celebration. You did
what
well.
I've been working on, and yes, I'm so excited to be figuring it out.
Yeah, no, she is, and we haven't merged her artifact yet into the proper repository. What that means is that she parsed a good database and it's gonna be available for everybody. So we're gonna do that soon. But after she's done that, she'll be a published. I say published, but an actual programmer. Can you believe that, Heather?
No, I'm not sure we can quite say that yet.
Oh yeah, I'm gonna put you on the contributor list, and that's another thing. If you contribute, anybody that wants to contribute to the projects, the iLeap and the ALeaps, and we'll talk about that a little bit at the end. You can do so, and you'll be a contributor. Yeah.
Very excited to be joining.
No, you're awesome. You're
Jerry.
Awesome. Saying hi to Jerry there. All right. So what have I done? So I've been obviously doing some coding. One of the libraries that we use for the open source tools that I just mentioned, community tools, just changed some of their licensing and how they plan on having access. So we're kind of dealing with that. The tooling still works as normal, but we're moving away. A big shout out to Johan is in the chat. He's going to help me. And I appreciate you, man. He's going to help me see if we can change that requirement to something that actually works for us and works for the community. Kevin for being my right-hand person, working with all this type of stuff, and James and a whole bunch of other folks. So, a heart for you all. I appreciate you. Do I have a heart reaction?
I was gonna say, where was it when you just did the heart?
I do, because my love for them and the community is a lot. All right, but enough messing around. So last episode with February, we're still in February. We're still celebrating Black History Month. So Heather was gonna bring us a person that we should know about. That's important to the art field and the computer field in general. So why don't you talk to us about who's the person to remember in this Black History Month?
Sure. Let me share my screen here. And our notable contributor to digital forensic for Black History Month this week is Mark Dean. So Mark Dean is an American inventor and computer engineer, one of the most prominent Black inventors in the field of computers. He started working at IBM in 1980, and he's the co-inventor of the personal computer, of the PC. He holds 3 of the 9 patents for being the co-creator of the IBM personal computer released in 1981. He's the first African American to become an IBM Fellow, which is the highest level of technical excellence at their company. He's been inducted into the National Inventors Hall of Fame, as well as numerous other accomplishments. And one of his biggest contributions in the PC's early days was a whole new ecosystem of IBM-compatible peripheral devices. And he now continues to give back to the digital forensics community. He's a professor with the Department of Electrical Engineering and Computer Science at the University of Tennessee. So that is the website for his personal accomplishments and his CV, if anybody wants to go check it out.
Oh, and I was looking at some of the patents he has, which is a bunch. And he's still, obviously he's around, he's still teaching, like you mentioned, and he's almost 70, and he's still cranking out patents, right? And it's amazing. Some of them are about neural networks, and I remember it was in college, neural networks being like a thing. It still is. It's kind of that AI kind of builds on some of that neural networks technology, and how these circuits kind of train themselves to do certain things. So he has really a lot of patents of that. I hope I don't expect myself to have a patent but at least I hope in my 70s to still be kicking it, in the field. So that's the I want to emulate him in that sense. So thank you, Heather, for the introduction.
If I had to guess, I would say you will be.
I'm gonna be the old little grandpa nerd. That's what I'm gonna be.
Oh, there you go.
I think I might be that right now. A lot of young people in the office. Anyway, so yeah, so we gotta celebrate, the good folks that do good contributions and keep them in our thoughts, and emulate them.
Definitely.
All right, so a lot of stuff is happening, in the blogosphere for our field. So we're gonna highlight a couple of them. So what's the first one that's coming up? Good blog article.
So, Forensic Scooter has another great article with the Photos.sqlite always, because he has all of the best data and blogs on the Photos.sqlite database. But this one directly relates to transferring data to an iPhone, right? So it relates to how a device records and stores data when the device was set up via data transfer versus restored from an iCloud backup. The blog specifically addresses the local photo library, and it aims to answer the question why particular media files are located in the local photo library versus the cloud photo library. He has an entire testing blog set up where he uses commercial tools as well as open source tools to perform the testing and answer the questions that were presented to him regarding this topic. And let's see, I have and this will be in the notes when we put it up on the website, but this is the link to the Forensic Scooter blog and that particular blog article.
And, I get a lot of value out of this database. And can you share with our folks what value you get from it, and I'll do the same?
Oh my gosh, yeah. So the photos database, the Photos.sqlite database contains so much data about your photos that isn't parsed by the commercial tools. So going in, there's so much more to find. And these blogs that the Forensic Scooter has been sharing with the community actually outline a lot of the artifacts and the different things you can find out about the photos stored on your device.
Oh yeah, look, and let me give you a couple of examples for the folks. Why is this important? If you want to determine if a picture was taken with the phone, you gotta look at certain factors, right? You look at the metadata, you look at the path, you look at creation timestamps. There is a really nice field in one of the tables in the database for the bundle ID origin. I forgot what the name of the table is, but Scott has it in his blog collection, right? It's pretty neat because if it has a bundle ID, if you're not familiar, just folks are listening, a bundle ID is the internal name of the application. If you're using WhatsApp, most likely it's gonna be called com.whatsapp, like a URL in reverse. They also call it reverse URL names or bundle IDs, and those are the names internal to the app and the names that show up in when the developers are working on their programs. Okay. So if it's there, you know that that picture came from that app. It's another point of confirmation. If that entry in the database is empty, it was generated by one of the functionalities of the device, of the phone itself, which is super useful. Another thing is iOS. I think since iOS, correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, since iOS 16 or 16 or 15, I don't know which.
I think 16, yeah.
16, you can also have that ability, but also change the geolocation and the timestamps of your pictures.
Okay, actually, I think that might even be older. Yeah.
Older, yeah. I think it might be older. Mm-hmm. So yeah. The thing is that when it changes that, it doesn't go to metadata of the picture and change it. It changes it in the database, right? So what I do is I did an artifact, and I discussed it in the past, that you compare the metadata of the picture with the metadata of the database, and you can figure out if there's been some shenanigans, if the person's trying to be, obfuscate some of the activity. Now, your tooling will most likely pick out the correct timestamp because they're going off of the actual picture, not the entries of the database. But intent is important, right? Why would a person try to change the timestamp and the geolocation of a compromising picture? And if you're not looking for that information, you'll be missing a piece of the context of your case. Right. Hopefully that makes sense. If it doesn't make sense, Heather, just
no, it makes sense.
throw something at me from the screen, across the screen.
No, it definitely makes sense.
Yeah, and there's a lot of functionality. Knowing if it's coming from the cloud, like Photos.sqlite cloud, or actually the device, is also super important. You can't assume that if it's in a Photos.sqlite without looking, that it came from that device, right? It could have been another device that pushes stuff off of the cloud. So really require reading if you're working these type of media origin cases. So
I think some of the commercial tools are stating now whether the media was possibly captured by the device. So you can definitely use that Photos.sqlite to go and validate what they're showing you in your forensic tools.
Oh, it's a necessity. And again, I do appreciate Scott really making his mark around this database, because he's leading the everybody, the community on that. And look, we cannot do it all. Like, one person cannot do it all, right? Like, I don't have the bandwidth to deal with Photos.sqlite in the same way that he might not have the bandwidth to deal with the leaps, and you don't have the bandwidth to deal with all the other stuff that you're dealing with. So we come together and we make everyone better. So let's continue to do that.
Yeah, definitely. Also contributing with a new blog is Mattia again. He did a blog with the Android Wi-Fi config store XML file. So anybody that's not familiar with that, it stores the Wi-Fi data. It's stored in the user partition of an Android device. The file is parsed by most commercial and open source tools, but all of the data that's available in that XML file is not always parsed. So in my recent test data for one of my Android devices, I used a few of the commercial tools that I always use in every case. And what was parsed from this file was the SSID, the security, and the password. So those are three things that were parsed for me. But Mattia's blog outlines other data that can be recovered from this file. Some of it includes like if the Wi-Fi network was auto-joined, or how many reboots there were since the last use, has the device ever connected, and other artifacts such as that.
Yeah, and that whole MAC address and settings and all that stuff, that's super important. And I can make a quick point. Just because a tool has an artifact for something doesn't mean it's going to show you everything for that something, all right? This is the case with this XML file. It was the case a couple of years ago with a Dropbox app. I want to say it was Android, but don't quote me on it. It's on my blog, somewhere in my blog, where there were so many tables in regards to how many times did you access this image through the service, right? Dropbox. If the picture was shared, and to whom and where, a whole bunch of stuff. So it's really worthwhile to always revisit some of the stuff. Look, Wi-Fi config store XML, I've seen that a million times. A new version can put new stuff in there. And I've seen that happen as well. So again, Mattia, in Italy, he's doing also a great job putting that content. Again, we're going to put all these links on the notes, so don't sweat it if you're listening as you're driving or walking or whatever. Don't worry, you don't have to stop the recording to write it down. We're going to put it in the notes, both on the podcast and on the YouTube channel, so you can get them there.
So another new article that came out. I actually saw this on the CCL Solutions group page. Is an article out of the UK related to AI generated imagery. So they did a research project to identify the use of AI platforms on a host machine. So they looked at Chrome and Windows artifacts of interest, and they include but are not limited to like jump lists, prefetch files, amcache, event logs, Windows activity timeline, most recently used, and a whole bunch of other artifacts. So the researchers used a variety of commercial and open source tools, and they identify both visual and non-visual indicators, including like file names, URLs, and file system artifacts that relate to AI generated imagery.
And I mean, this research is important. You say, well, okay, why do I care if I can find artifacts that indicate that a picture was made with, let's say, Mindjourney or DALL-E or some of the other image generators? Well, there's a couple of things there. And again, a little bit of a warning there. We're going to briefly talk about child exploitation here for a second. Nothing graphic, but for a second. There is, if you look at the statutes, at least federal statutes, right? If you make a depiction of a known child, right? Even if it's synthetic, right? Like synthetic, I mean not generated by a computer. You will be prosecuted for it, right? So you can use this type of tooling to create contraband, right? Images that are illegal, right? So some of us that work in this field, we're gonna make sure that we understand where can we find those artifacts. So all the stuff that's new is built on stuff that's not new, right? And all that Heather mentioned is stuff that we know how it works, we know where it is. The question is, how does that apply to this new set of indicators of activity? In this case, AI. So they're doing that. I would hope they come out with one for mobiles, and I know we're mobile centric here, but we're just mobile centric because that's what people use the most. They carry their cell phones on top of them, right? They don't carry their laptops as much, right? And that's pretty much it. Always think about new technology comes in. How does that leave a print in my devices or in the cloud somewhere else, based on stuff that I already know? And we go from the known to the unknown, and kind of gather those pieces, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. The article really does a great job of outlining where you can find each of the artifacts and what types of file names you're looking for each of the different AI platforms too. So it's definitely a great read, worth the read.
Yeah, and if you're a developer, I say developer, look, let me take that back, right? If you're in digital forensics, right, and you want to really up your expertise and your capabilities, try to learn a little bit of scripting or coding. Why? Because you can take this information and then you automate it. The whole point of you knowing, this is where it's at, this is how it would be named, this is the locations, this is how it's found, is for you to not have to do it manually every single time with a piece of paper, reading and finding it. You can actually make a process that automates that find, search, and extract, right? And if you can automate the finding, the searching, and the extraction of this data, you'll be miles ahead in your workload. So yeah, take some time and take it to the next level and automate that type of stuff.
And I don't know if anybody has seen, but Magnet's Idea Lab, if you're not a member of the Idea Lab, you should sign up and join. AI is the future. So Magnet's Idea Lab is a platform where you can go and contribute to different ideas in the community. And Project Goose is a new project that has been started in the Idea Lab, where you can examine images to determine the likelihood that they were created with the common AI tools. They outline Stable Diffusion, Midjourney, and DALL-E. And you can analyze videos to gain insight into their authenticity. They use Medex forensics, I believe. As part of this, right? And you could build filters in Axiom too, related to the AI artifacts. So looks like a really cool project.
Well, and it has a lot of stuff. So for folks to understand,
Yeah.
I mean, we discussed this a few blog posts, a few podcasts ago. Magna Forensics, they were acquired by a bigger conglomerate, and they're being on a buying spree lately, right? They bought. We talked about a few episodes ago, an exploit outfit to up those capabilities, meta forensics, and also video forensics, a whole bunch of stuff. Now, this is why this is relevant. And that's why I have, for folks that are just listening, behind me I have a little marquee with light, and it says AI is the future. I think this tool, I might be wrong. Maybe folks in the chat can tell me if I'm wrong or not. It's the first tool in our field, digital forensics field, that has generative AI integrated into it. And generative AI, what that does is you talk to the thing. I say talk, but you type to the thing, but in human-like sentences. And they give an example. Maybe you can pull the picture up as I'm describing it.
Yes.
So you imagine you have a humongous collection of data, terabytes and terabytes, and say millions of chats because you're doing something, right? If you want to narrow down on something specific, a topic, you can tell the AI, you can see here example on the screen, those folks can watch. Do they talk about exchanging money? And the AI says, yes, they discuss exchanging money in the context of purchasing this and that. And actually puts a couple of quotations and then puts a couple of view citations. I assume, I haven't used this tool, it's still under their kind of beta testing. I want to say beta, I don't know if it's beta, but testing phase. And right. I want to assume you can click on it and then get to that source data or some other representation of it, right? And to me, this is huge because AI usually, before this, when they tell you we have AI on the tool, what was it usually, Heather? Do you know? You remember?
What's that?
Usually when they say we have AI integrating in our tool, they didn't mean this. What did they meant?
Oh, for pictures.
For pictures, exactly. Yeah. It's like, oh, look, you can look for guns, you can look for money, you can look for all these things.
Right.
Right? And do you think it did a good job most of the time?
No. So, yeah, no.
I mean, we're not haters, but we're also not chill. So, and then we're talking about in general, right? I'm not picking on anybody, but for... I think we share the same opinion. Most of the tools in the space did a really poor job using that type of quote unquote AI to find those type of things, right? But the technology, at least for generative AI, and we'll see how that applies to pictures at some other point, but like actually telling the system, hey, give me the context. I think it's game changing. AI is the future, right? And it's the part of the show where I get in my soapbox now and let everybody know what I think about things. I don't know if you watch The Simpsons. Things that grind my gears. No, it's not gear grinding. No. All right. So what are my thoughts on this? Okay, soapbox moment. If you're in this field, right, and you're used to saying, well, I'm just gonna run this tool, pull the report, and push the report out, and be done for your day. This field is not for you anymore, right? You would be expected to be able to have not only the technical skills in knowing where the stuff is to verify and validate, you'll be expected to be able to kind of have the soft skills to communicate with the AI in a way that's effective, right? So you say, well, do they discuss about exchanging money? And the system says, yes, A, B, and C. Well, you know what? That A, B, and C might lead to, FGH questions or whatever other letters you want to use. Okay, so you have to interact with the system, and you might say, well, why would I do that? Again, imagine you have terabytes upon terabytes upon terabytes of data. Is the system has this broad understanding of it, and you can use a verb. I'm gonna say verbal, even though it's typed, but sentence-like interactions with the system. You can really, I believe, narrow down what you need to get to pretty fast. Right? Like instead of me having to read 500 messages to get to something, I can say, hey, can you find me something about this topic? Go there and I could go deeper. And then you ask the next question, hey, about this topic, did they go into this other thing? And then it might lead you to another thing. And that requires soft skills, right? And let me tell you, and you correct me, I mean, let me know what you think, but you could have the investigator kind of interrogate the system. But at some point, there'll be some questions that the investigator cannot ask of the digital forensics AI, because I would hope in the future I could tell her, well, can you tell me in what databases it's located, right? Can you tell me if there is another entry for this at the same time in the SecB, battery system format, right? And then you can start in that interaction adding artifacts, right? As you're having this conversation with the system, which I believe is going to change how we interface with our data in a way that we cannot imagine, right? I mean, am I crazy by saying this, or what do you think?
Definitely not crazy. I agree. I think I completely 100% agree that if you're a button pusher and think that's what forensics is going to be with all of this new technology, then you may want to look into something different, because it's going to be a lot of validation.
Well, and most people think, well, if I have an AI, then I don't have to really go into these other things, right? Because, like, how can I say this? AI will not take the place of your button pushing, or let me rephrase that.
No.
The AI will not take the place of you validating things. I guess that's the next level of it, right? Because the AI can tell you all these things, and the AI at some point could make an erroneous correlation. And why wouldn't it? Even tools that don't have AI can make and have made erroneous correlations, right? Or erroneous, and not that the data is wrong, but the way they present the data might be confusing or might be misleading. Not wrong, right? And we're not going to discuss it because a lot of cases are still ongoing, but I know of current cases that are happening where the name of a field in a database has become a point of contention in a murder trial, for example, right?
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the name is misleading unless you understand, you know what I mean? So you have to really look at that context. Your work as an examiner working with AI means that you need to verify and validate. And I think this is my second, I got a couple of points here, but my second point is you need to really focus on the artifacts, not as the artifact, but as the data stores or data structures. Let me explain what I mean by that. We're used to train in our field as in, here's a tool, you're gonna take the extraction, you're gonna run it, and then you have an output, and this is how the output works, what the output tells you, and push it forward, right? Well, that concept of learning to the tool has to change, because there's no learning or teaching to the tool when it's AI. You talk to it, you know? Right. So what am I going to teach you, right? Like, talk to it. You got to know what to ask. So how do I know what to ask? Well, you got to understand the case, which is another soapbox moment for another day. But you also got to understand the data structures themselves, the artifacts, but the data structures themselves. Like, well, where is this data located? Is it a JSON file? What are the keys that are relevant to it, right? You have to be able to do that, especially if it's nested among, inside of another one, right? And there's a lot of artifacts that are nested like that. Data structures inside data structures. How does AI play into that? Another point, I got a lot of points here because this is like my thing for the week. Vendors usually, they put the data and they either give you two things. They give you the end result, which is fine. But when you want to validate, they give you either the offset, or maybe if it's a SQLite database, the name of the table and the name of the fields, but they don't tell you how their fields are, or the tables are joined or connected or not, right? Under what keys? They don't tell you any of that. And when you say, well, look, here's this information, this offset, and you go to the offset, and I see something there, but whatever's around is not helping me, right? I believe that, or at least I would hope, vendors with AI would be more transparent in how they show, or how they will have us track back to the source. Just giving me the offset of where it's sitting in the data store or the extraction is not going to cut it, right? Because we need to have the context to be able to track it down. Just going to court and saying, well, I got this because I asked the AI about it, and the AI told me that, and I believe the AI, it's not going to cut it. The AI is not going to testify for you, okay?
I was just going to say that. They're going to want to call the AI as a witness on the stand. That's not happening.
Do you swear to tell the truth and nothing but the truth? Yeah, the AI, I mean, I guess we can build an AI that says that, but that's gonna be accepted, right?
Right.
So we need more transparency. How do we get that? Now, there might be some issue with some vendors because maybe revealing that traceability might give away some secret sauce on how they decode things, maybe. I don't know. I think that's going to be an ongoing conversation as AI becomes more ubiquitous in our tool. Another thing is, and last two things, because I know I'm eating a lot of time, but
oh, you're fine.
Before I go to the other things, I did propose, and I put that in LinkedIn. If you're interested, go into my LinkedIn and check it out. I propose a possible way. So I say, for example, I need to trace this back. Well, maybe the tooling can provide me, for example, the files and path where the stuff is, identify the data structures, right? Is there's records and fields in it, provide those as well, right? and provide any acquiring or processing logic, be it as SQLite queries. If it's key value pairs, then what are those, right? What are the keys that you're getting this value out of? If they're nested, where is the traceability of those nested key value pairs? All right. And then after that, give me a link to an alternate presentation. Maybe it will be the spreadsheet-like presentations that we always use, and there's nothing wrong with them, right? But I want to have that ability to go from the conversation to the sourcing, traceability, understanding where the stuff came from, and then show me, if I request it, a more traditional, rows and columns, Excel spreadsheet visualization of what the data is. And I think folks are commenting on the chat. What are they saying?
Yeah.
Here?
So Matt Beers says, I think that it's the tool's responsibility to tell us their query. We as examiners should have the skill set to build this ourselves.
Yeah, and the thing is that some, and I agree with you. I would hope they would do that. And query is just a SQLite query is an example. It's like the most known mobile forensics data structure format, and I do believe that's going to be in the past moving forward pretty soon. But some queries can get pretty wild, pretty rowdy.
Yeah.
Like you're joining 20 tables and pivoting on so many things, and it could become an issue there. But we need to be able to parse that. But I cannot go through it if you don't share that logic with me. So that's something to be kind of mindful of. What else are the folks talking about?
JE, there's going to be more need for scrutiny in that regard as well, because people will try to take shortcuts. I couldn't agree with that one more.
Oh no! I mean, it's gonna bite them. It's gonna bite them in the posterior. It's like the lawyer you saw in the news. The lawyer that asked ChatGPT about, hey, can you tell me about this case law about this? And ChatGPT said, of course I can tell you about this case law. There's this case, horse versus cat, and it talk about that. And they put it in a pleading or whatever it was. And the cases were made up. Like ChatGPT dreamed them up.
Yes. Yeah. So one of our commenters wrote in like those court cases where lawyers used AI to generate motions and it referenced non-existent cases. And that's exactly what you're talking about. So.
Like JE and me, we're like in that same wavelength. Like we're like right there together. No, and how would that look in this type of in our field? I mean, I think that companies like, I say Axiom is the first implementation that I've seen, but others that will also follow suit because they will follow suit. I'm pretty sure they will put some logic for the AI not to make up stuff. I believe that. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. But that's a great segue, and thank you for that. My next point on my soapbox is about how things are presented. And when I talk about presentation, what I mean by that is the context and the intent. Intent is the word I was looking for as I was kind of going spinning my gears. Intent, right? You can talk about something that happened, but the way you describe it, the way you present it, might change the meaning of the whole thing, even though you didn't change the actual thing, right? Does that make sense, Heather?
Absolutely. However you describe something that you're reporting on is really, really important to make sure you're describing it accurately, especially since it's going to people who are not in our field, right? It's going to go to a case investigator or a prosecutor who they're not in our field. They don't understand how to, I guess, interpret it themselves. So we're interpreting it for them. Well,
and absolutely, and even within the AI, right? Because they're the consumers of that. But if you say the AI, they were talking about laundering money, and they go, yeah, they were talking about laundering and money in this context, and then you go, it's like, well, actually, the word money here, they were meaning something else, right? Maybe the conversation between the participants, money was a euphemism for something else, for, I don't know, washing clothes. I don't know, right? Because it's expensive clothes. They were talking about their Gucci. I don't know. I don't buy expensive clothes. Look, I wear free conference polo shirt for work. So whatever. An expensive piece of clothing that they were actually going to wash it. And they call it money because it's expensive. I came up with that on the fly, as you can tell. But well, the AI might not have the contextual knowledge to make sense of that nuance. And you ask it a question, and if you just take it at face value, you're going to make a big, huge mistake. There was maybe no laundering of no money, okay?
Right.
So testing and validation will will be incremented. It won't be only testing and validation of data and process, but also of how you query those AIs, right? And what are the responses the AI gives you? And see if the AIs intent in its response, I say intent in quotations, it's not a person, right? But the quote unquote intent of the answer actually matches what the source data is presenting, right? As a human, you need to do that. So that's like my next to last point. So it's a good segue there. And now it comes to the last one, which you did mention, that presentation to the stakeholders, right? We need to make sure the intent is correct and then translate that. And we talked about last episode, not to make anybody happy. I'm not here to make anybody happy. I'm here to just state fact, period. If you're happy or not happy about it, honestly, I couldn't care any less or anymore. I'm so sweet like that today. I don't know.
Yeah. Valentine's Day is bleeding over.
I spent all my love yesterday. That's why I'm at a love deficit now. All right, so that's my AI spiel for the week. So Heather, thank you for letting me put it out there.
Yeah. Listen, you have your topic every week where you can get on your soapbox. I like it.
We're gonna make it an official thing now, moving forward.
Yeah. It's like the intro for me and your soapbox. Those are our things.
There we go. Write it down.
Okay. All right. Add it to the list. Another topic we're going to talk about this week, we mentioned last week, we were going to talk about vehicle forensics a little bit. So I don't know about you. Do you do a lot of vehicles in your regular everyday job?
So I do some of the parsing of it. I don't actually interact with the vehicles themselves. We have some folks obviously that do, and both at the state and local and federal level, we got folks at different levels that do that part. I have been trained for that, but I'm tasked with mostly the analysis part, not with the pulling the stuff out. So I guess a long answer to say I do, but not from the beginning, more at the end part of it, I guess.
Right. So I'm similar. I've been trained in vehicle forensics, but I don't go out and take the modules out of the vehicles. There's a bunch of people in my office that do that part. I've been doing mostly they're bringing back the modules, and my part has been the chip offs lately. We have had so many modules that need a chip off. So that's kind of what I've been doing. And a lot of the vehicles that we're getting, the file system we're seeing is the QNX file system, which I'm sure you're seeing in your parsing.
All the time.
If you're out there and you're seeing the QNX partition or the QNX file system, there's a video on Alexis's YouTube on how to access the logical files in a QNX partition. I have done this on actual cases, and if I can do it, everybody else can. So I just highly recommend going out and watching that video to be able to access those logical files.
Yeah, and let me give people a quick brief. Like, cars have a lot of information, right? Both at the level of the vehicle, the internal network of the sensors of the vehicle, in regards to how fast things are going, but also the infotainment system. What that means is the computers that run your little screens that tells you the door is open, again, how fast you're going. And there's different ways of you accessing those data stores and pulling that data out. Like Heather's saying, sometimes involves a chip off. And those that don't know what a chip off is chips on the computer. You got to take them off. And that's a pretty involved process. I think you told me that you did one the other day on the first go, right?
Yes, I got it to go immediately. I didn't have to fight with it. No troubleshooting.
That's wild.
No cleaning of the chip. It just went. That's like rare. It's very rare. Like a unicorn.
What you need to do is run and play the Powerball after that, because the luck was on you. and we're joking about it, but it's really involved. It's an involved process a lot of time. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, definitely. We use Burla in our office to parse the data, and they'll handle those chip off extractions, and they actually do a lot of their own extractions as well and parsing. I believe that if you're members of like some of the user groups out there, there's a whole bunch of people too talking about ISPs on vehicles. I haven't done an ISP, so on any vehicles yet.
Can you give a quick, super 2-sentence, 3-sentence explanation of why ISP is to the folks?
Oh yeah, so it stands for in-system programming, and it's where you solder hair wire to test points on the board. So you'll solder hair wire to the points that you need to be able to pull the data from the chip. So it doesn't involve actually removing that memory chip. It just involves pulling the data from it off of the board.
Yeah, and being able to find those contact points and knowing that those contact points give you access to the data is huge, right? It's way less involved than having to melt a chip out of it or whatever technique you're using to get it out.
Right. Well, finding those test points can be quite a chore, but there's a lot of people who do that out in the community and share. So even on mobile devices, they'll share the pinouts, like what you need to be able to solder to pull data from mobile phones. There's a ton of that shared on the groups out in the community. So thank you to everybody who does that. I actually had a message in my LinkedIn this week asking me if I plan on doing that, and I would love to if I could find some extra time. But yeah. 24 hours in a day.
Oh yeah, the days need to be long. We need to move to Mars or something. I don't know if Mars has longer days. I'm making that up. But
yeah, wherever that place is.
Well, and the thing with that mobile forensics, we were talking about a second ago, is like you get all this data, and it's independent of, like, you don't need let's say the phone is unavailable, but the suspect were traveling on this vehicle, you were to identify it, you can see that data store and query it and get important information for your case. And that's it's even it's used, and it's not nothing new. It's old, right? When there's car crashes and there might be a person that dies in the car crash, you need to figure out who was at fault. That data comes into play as well. So you got the extraction piece I just mentioned, and you have the understanding of the decoding piece. How do I access the file system? The video that you mentioned on my YouTube, I talk about how can I use free tools like Linux to be able to mount a QNX file system, pull the data as a logical extraction in a zip file, and then how can I go through it and find things of value, right? So there's all those pieces, then you can build your case off of them. So what are folks talking about in the chat, Heather?
Shannon Burgess says, we need Celebrate Magnet to hop on vehicle forensics. The new GM modules run AAOS, so chip off an ISP is no longer a solution. And that kind of was going to actually be my next point. I wonder how much longer we'll be able to do chip off an ISP as a method for vehicles, because I believe they're going to start rolling out encryption on more and more modules that come out of vehicles. I know some of the newer modules already have encryption present. And yeah, I'm wondering, I mean, the cars that we can do the chip offs on, let's face it, they're going to be around for a while. So, yeah. So it's not going to be phased out completely, but I do believe that some of the newer vehicles coming out are going to have that encryption on by default.
Yeah, and that's something that I was telling a few years ago back, telling folks, yeah, they're going to encrypt it. And like, why would they encrypt it? That's not needed. And I remember people kind of arguing with me with it, and like, in my mind, just wait 3 years or 2 years and you'll see. And now I don't remember who it was, so I cannot even gloat about it. But no, it will require I guess for us in the field to look at cars as we look at phones, in a sense, right? How can we find some exploits to be able to get some sort of privileged access to the infotainment system, and then ask it for the file system, right? So yeah, I mean, I hope vendors really get on that train soon, because that's what the future is.
I'd be willing to bet Burla's already working on methods for that. I'd be willing to bet. I don't know for sure, but
I mean, and again, folks are not familiar. Burla is a company in that space that deals with this type of vehicle forensics, and there's always a financial incentive to be able to provide this access, lawful access. I always like to say that lawful access to some of this data. If I'm trying to solve a kidnapping and I have the car that was used in the kidnapping, well, maybe the car has the information I need to find that victim, right? Or whatever it is. So lawful access, it's important, and hopefully we can continue to do that moving forward.
Yeah. I've heard too that Burla's developing a chip-off course. I hope they incorporate ISP as well, if we're going to see some ISP pinouts for boards. But there's chip-off courses at a lot of different vendors, but I would love to see what theirs is going to be like as well.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And again, don't sleep on the car thing. People need to be aware of those capabilities.
Oh, yeah.
And I had cases where I talked to the agent and say, hey, did they have the car? What car do they have? Oh, they have this car. You know what? Maybe you want to look into this, right? And they're like, you know what?
Yeah.
I didn't even think of that, right? And
Yeah.
and that could very well be.
Yeah. I think one of the most frustrating things for the vehicle forensics for me personally is I want to validate everything. And I'll do that with a test phone, right? I'll go get an Android phone and generate test data and test what I'm seeing in a mobile device. But I'm not going to go pick up a Ford and drive it around and test it and be able to validate everything I'm seeing. So it's kind of frustrating to me a little bit that you kind of have to rely on what the tool is showing you a little more than you would in mobile forensics or computer forensics.
Well, yeah. So now you give me now you put the box out again, the soapbox out, and I'm gonna step on it one more time. Okay, sorry.
Do it.
Look, my experience with this type of stuff, and I'm in generalities, right? In the digital forensics world, when we talk about computers or phones, we like to talk about black and white, ones and zeros. But in the mobile forensics phones, I believe the tolerances are different, right? When you talk about a car being at a location at a particular speed, it's not going to be like, well, it was at 55.555351 miles, right? The system will give you a speed, but it's a tolerance, right? It might be between a range, right? The sensitivity of the sensors in a car have tolerances, right? How the car deploys an airbag, right? How much force needs to be exerted to deploy that? There's a tolerances, right? So there's a lot of gray area. I say a lot. Let me rephrase that. There's a lot of things you need to consider when you're doing with vehicle forensics and what those sensors are telling you, and that's separate, right, from if the sensors in that vehicle are properly calibrated, because the car might be registering 55 miles per hour, but it's actually going at 40. So how do you know that, right?
Right.
And in certain cases, you might need to go to the proper channels, and you might have to take the suspect car and drive it and measure it to say, look, it's highly likely that these are the tolerances and what the speed was, right?
Right.
In some cases, if the car is totaled, right, you might not be able to do that, and then you have to live with those unknowns and look at things as, look, within these tolerances, this is the likely scenario of what happened, and there's no other scenarios that do not fit this pattern, and it's all consistent, as opposed to, yeah, here it is, a 1 or a 0. Does that even make sense? Does that make sense?
Yeah,
How I'm presenting that?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, when you're dealing with things that are detecting sensors that detect events in real life, like the air pressure, how fast, how slow, if it's moving left or right, even with GPS in your phones, what are the tolerances and what's the precision, right? If you're in a city like Chicago, which I know Leslie is in Instagram listening, a lot of respect for her. Your GPS is gonna go crazy because the buildings are so tall, right? So if I get a reading in Chicago from a GPS, I gotta be really careful, right? Was it in a location that's actually getting accurate readings or not, right? So there's a lot of those stuff that we don't think about because we like to press a button and move forward, but we need to really consider, especially if it's an important piece of your case.
Yeah. Abraham and Shannon both make good points in the chat too. Junkyards could be a good source for your test equipment. And the other one is the validation is more difficult, but for ISP or burla supported vehicles, rental cars are your friend. And he's right. You can go get a rental car, drive it around, download that data. You better not chip it off. I feel like the rental car company will probably have a problem with that. But junkyards and rental cars, sure.
Hey, look, if you take the dash out of that car, make sure you can put it back together how you received it.
Be gentle on the rental car, or you might end up with a big bill.
Yeah, I busted like 4 or 5 of those screws, and now the dashboard doesn't come on.
Yeah. So it could end up being a problem, but definitely an idea for source or for test data.
Hey, look, it's an idea. We're not supporting it, and we're not neither poo-pooing it, right? I'm just telling you what the chat says, okay? Don't come at us later that we're endorsing any of these ideas, all right?
Yeah. When it comes to some of the encrypted vehicles, though, I actually have seen an encrypted system that the user data was encrypted, but the system data wasn't. So you could still pull some valid, useful data, even though it wasn't in the user data partition, was found in the system data. So keep in mind of that too. If you can't get past encryption on some of the newer things, there still may be something useful there.
Oh, absolutely. Just again, in with phones, the same thing, right? AFU, BFU type of stuff. When the phone
Right.
turns on, it's encrypted, but a portion of it before you put your PIN code has to be in sort of decrypted state, because how would you get phone calls? You know what I mean?
Right.
The phone
Yeah.
has to actually be able to access certain functionalities to receive a phone call, to receive a message, even if you haven't put your PIN in first for the first time, to kind of
Right.
unlock the whole system. And again, we have to know what our environment is and what can we get from those environments in what particular moments, and see where we go from there.
Yeah. I have to share this comment though. Super glue and duct tape for the rental car. I have a feeling the bill will be still hitting your mailbox. So
Yeah, put some chew gum and make sure it dries.
yeah.
Oh my goodness. Yeah, don't do that, please.
Last thing I want to mention though about vehicle forensics too, don't forget about VLEAPP. I mean, the VLEAPP has support for some vehicles. There's not everything, but there are quite a few vehicles supported in VLEAPP. And if anybody wants to write artifacts, I can attest that you can do it. Right? And contribute to the vehicle forensics of the LEAPPs.
Yeah, no, I would appreciate that. Now, first, my complaint was I don't have enough data. So some folks within my organization and others have provided me some sample data that they got.
Yes.
And now I don't have time. It's horrible. So now I'm the funnel here that's stopping everybody. I want to make a quick comment. Geraldine is on Instagram, and I keep in mind on the chat on Instagram as well. And she's saying that she had a Mercedes vehicle that she did a hot swap, and a hot swap is you're able to take that drive and keep it alive and kind of move it away and put it somewhere else. And some of that stuff it's encrypted or got encrypted in the process. So it's something that we need to look for best practices and to the best of our abilities test if you're able to, and if not, do our best to go through it. Yeah.
All right. So you're going to tell us now, right? What's new with the LEAPPs?
Yes. So first of all, again, a reminder for folks that are maybe here for the first time. The Logs, Events, and Properties Parsers framework is the LEAPPs. It's something that I developed a few years ago, and thankfully the community has embraced it. And now we have a good core of 5 or 6 developers that kind of contribute their free time to it. Plus Heather, now we're gonna make her number 7, lucky 7, to start making some artifacts.
Slowly rolling in.
And we got a whole bunch of people participating, one-offs here and there. So the tooling does parse Android extractions, iOS extractions, like Heather mentioned, vehicle extractions, and returns from ISPs, or internet service providers. So you got a Google Cloud or iCloud that comes down. You can run it by a tool and get some artifacts out of it, right? We're just a triaging tool, so you use it to kind of get a quick glance of what might be there of importance. Also, we use it as a way of having a presentation for unsupported artifacts from third-party tools. So if the big tool makers don't support your, new chat app, you can put some support within one of the LEAPPs, and you have a nice report for it until the bigger tools catch up to us. So we move pretty fast. So what do we have that's new? So for iLeap, for iOS, Kevin Pagano, and I know he's in the chat, or he might be in more than one chat, I think. He might be in Instagram and in YouTube.
Wow.
I mean, he's a man of the internet, okay? Again, I joke with him because he's my right-hand man right now, dealing with the projects. He did a sysdiagnose shutdown logs parser. It's based on research done by Kaspersky. So I did not put the links for the banners, but we'll put them in the show so you can read that research.
Yeah.
And ourselves, you and me, but I did the coding on this one. We did Google Chat that we added recently. Yes. And then Django Fayola, he made Waze for iOS, Waze parser for kind of just geolocation posts and mapping, right? I love Kevin Pagano put a smiley face there in the chat. Kevin rocks. And in A-Leap, that's for Android. Yeah, Kevin's still, hitting 100. He did a multiple profile support update for some of the artifacts. What does that mean? It means that some artifacts, and I'll say the same thing with, I'm going to add him to this, Patrick Dalla for Gmail. So you have the Gmail application, but you can have multiple Gmail accounts in an application. And some of those, I was missing them. I was just showing one when there were 5. So they updated that code to start supporting that. Now, what I've been hearing is that with Android 14 is the one, right? We're in 13 now, right? Yeah.
14, yeah.
Yeah, 14. So the new Android that's coming out, what they're trying to do is take advantage of multi-user support in Android devices. What that means is, that I can log in with my account. I can give you my phone, log out, and you can log in, right? And have multiple accounts in those phones. Use it for you to be able to have, for example, two WhatsApp accounts running at the same time. Because one WhatsApp account is going to be tied to this to your other quote-unquote account, and then to your real account. So you can have two accounts from the same application running at the same time. This will internally look as a different account, but it's not a different account. It's still the same user that controls both accounts. Does that make sense, Heather, my explanation?
Yeah.
There?
Yes, it does.
Right. So that's going to change our perception of how we parse these things as forensicators, right? Because we have to look at this data and take into account that these two accounts might be related, and we cannot mix the messages from one account on the WhatsApp with the other one. We gotta make sure we keep it separate, but keeping some sort of connection or user base because of who the user is. Okay, Samsung does that in a way right now. The Knox and some of the secure enclaves within the phone where you put your, I don't know, your pictures you don't want somebody to see.
Yeah, the secure folder.
The secure folder is actually another account in the phone. Another quote-unquote user account that's used for that purpose. So Samsung has done that for years now. I think it's Android, Google is catching up and making that. So again, take into account as these things come out, don't be surprised. You got to keep your pulse on, keep your hand on the pulse of these developments. Something like with the previous Android 13 when it came out, they changed XML into ABX format, and our tools broke. until Alex Caithness came in and make at least for the open source world, made some scripts for it. And now XML is binary in a lot of places in Android devices, right? We have to evolve with that. And if you know this thing is coming, when it comes, then you'll be able to, quickly triage what it is until the tooling catches up. What else? Oh, yeah. And then Patrick Della, he did also the Google last strip, an artifact that if I remember correctly, I made based on research by Josh Hickman.
Yeah,
I was missing a couple of fields there because my data set didn't have them. So he put some logic in the code to take account of these fields since they could appear in your data set. Again, we don't have we have to close the show, but just check those out. You can download them. They're Python based. They're totally free. And if you don't like them, I'll give you your money back, 100%, guaranteed.
So that actually brings us to the meme of the week. Everybody's favorite part, right?
Yeah, woohoo.
Let me share. Let's see here. There we go.
The meme of the week is the best part.
Yes. So the meme of the week this week is just everything knocked off the shelves in a supermarket or store. And it reads, also, I need you to finish this case that another examiner started.
Any semblance of a real life event is pure coincidence. Like the movies at the end, any of the events that depict real life in any sort of way is pure coincidence. Wink, wink, nod, nod, right?
Yeah. So I'm sure anybody who has worked on a case, has had to pick up something that another examiner started for some reason or another, and picking up where they left off can look a lot like this meme.
Things everywhere. And if you ask him, no, this is really organized. If it wasn't like this, I couldn't find my stuff. And I'm like, what? Are you nuts? Whatever you call organization is not, at least from my perspective. Yeah, no, and we have to do it, right? I mean, and I think the meme speaks to us considering how we do our work, because we, instead of saying that we get hit by a bus, let's say you might win the lotto and you might not want to work there anymore, right? So the folks that or get promoted, so the folks that come after you, are we leaving stuff in a way that's understandable, that's workable for them?
Right.
And are we doing our part, or are we just doing the minimum necessary because we know we got some TDY or we're going somewhere else and then drop it on somebody else, right? Well, let's try to avoid that, right? Let's make it work, make it organized, think of who's gonna come after you and use that data, and then be a nice coworker, man. Come on.
Yeah, clean up your mess.
Oh, Heather, again, thank you, and I wanna give you in public here extra thanks. I've been really stressed out with some work stuff and some project or the LEAPP. Some of the libraries need to change and all that. So Heather's been really kind to carry a lot of the load for the show this week because she's awesome. So thank you, Heather. You're the best.
Thanks.
All right, everybody. I think that's it, right? You had anything else for the good of the order?
That's all I've got.
All right, folks. Then we're hoping to line up our first interview of the show. This is not an interview show, and I think we're both being adamant to not to make it that, because we have enough interview shows in the space, but sometimes it might be necessary. So we're hoping to line one up. So we're not gonna tell you spill the beans yet, but
right.
If it happens,
you gotta make sure they're coming first.
Yeah, if it happens, it'll be great. It'll be a friendly environment here. We crack jokes, but we're here to inform, right? We're not here to hate on anybody or shill on anybody, right? So we'll have news on that soon. So again, everybody, thank you for the folks at the R in Instagram. I've been keeping an eye on the chat and a lot of folks joining in. Thank you for listening, and thanks for everybody that's still around, and thanks for you listening at home if you're listening or watching later. So we'll be back in not this next week, the next one.
Exactly. See you in 2 weeks. Thank you so much.
Take care, everybody, and let's put the music and say bye.
All right.
Bye.